So just in case that you didn't know about it, Evo just happened, which is arguably the biggest event in the world every single year connected to fighting games as a genre of video games, and there was an exhibition for Street Fighter 6 with two of the biggest streamers or content creators in the world, which are Ludwig and Tyler 1, okay? And it's specifically Ludwig made a comment that sparked a ton of controversy online, especially related to the fighting game community, and he said this.
You couldn't go live one time and show me what you were doing?
I mean, I like Street Fighter, but I also like viewers. It just doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. It's
True. That's kind of true. I'm sorry.
Boo!
And I actually really wanted to talk about this, not necessarily to address the controversy, you know, and discuss if what Ludwig said is right or wrong or anything like that. I want to talk about the actual topic of the comment, which is the viewership and popularity of fighting games, you know, as video games and on platforms like YouTube and Twitch and in the content creation space. Because for me, something incredibly interesting as somebody that has been a fan of fighting games my entire life, and I'm obviously on YouTube, you know, trying to make videos grow about something or around something that I am passionate about, which is fighting games. You know, a more unfiltered kind of like, you know, conversation video, just because I find this just so like fascinating and really interesting. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about or discuss when it comes to, you know, the popularity and viewership of fighting games on Twitch, on YouTube, and just fighting games as video games, because there's always, you know, this yearly kind of like debate of Steam charts on a fighting game, and it's like Invincible Versus or Fatal Fury have 100 players on Steam. They are dead games, you know, fighting games are falling or whatever. It always happens, right? And the most common comment online that you see is fighting games are niche. If I had like a drink every time that there is a, you know, the seasonal fighting game debate, and I read the comment fighting games are niche online, I will be drunk on the ground like every single day that there is a fighting game discussion online. Like, it is absolutely the most repeated typical comment that you see on the internet around fighting games. And like, in my opinion, it's not true. Dude, it's not that simple. Fighting games are not niche by definition at all. There have been so many gigantic fighting games only in the last decade, and also the idea that fighting games don't have any viewership, like, just let's take a look at it, you know, with nuance, instead of having such a simple, straightforward debate with very like simplistic arguments. Now, very obviously, when it comes to the case of Ludwig, which is, you know, somebody that is at the top of the content creation pyramid in the gaming space, what is viewership for him is very different for even people that are big in the fighting game scene, like Diaphone, for example, Brian F. I wouldn't even talk about Max, because Max is very clearly like on his own league. He's literally the top of the pyramid in fighting game content and viewership. But even, you know, for someone like Brian F and Diaphone, just to give those examples of like top tier content creators that are relatively big in the fighting game space, you don't think that they would like to have a 3 million views video on Dragon Ball FighterZ? Or for example, 1.5 million views on a video that is called Tekken 8 is hilarious. I think that, you know, there is more nuance to this than just saying fighting games are niche, especially in the content creation space, because there is still so much kind of like room to innovate and do cool, entertaining, or even useful content that a lot of people are going to watch. Of course, it is a bit smaller when you compare it to the biggest video games out there on scale in general, if you put it into perspective, but at the same time, the idea that you, for example, cannot grow online in making fighting game content, or you're never gonna play a fighting game that is popular, it is simply wrong. That is a lie, and I feel like, you know, the comment of fighting games are niche has done so much damage to what fighting games are as video games online and the perception that some people have about them, because they are not niche necessarily by definition. There is nuance around the idea of a lot of games that have been incredibly successful only, for example, in the last 10 years. And the thing about all of this is that you don't even need to go too crazy when it comes to, you know, finding the game that you're gonna use as an excuse to say that fighting games are not niche by definition. You know, they can be big, and they are a lot of the time. Just look at the last 10 years, man. Like Dragon Ball FighterZ, for example, right? DVFC came out almost 10 years ago, and we're talking about a game that sold more, or at least the same, than Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, a game that many people will consider one of the biggest Dragon Ball games of all time in terms of popularity and the impact that it had in content creation in the Dragon Ball, you know, space and video game culture. And at the same time, we gotta understand that, for example, many people would put Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 as top 5 like Dragon Ball video games of all time, and Dragon Ball FighterZ is right there alongside that game. And Bandai, right, Arc System Works, they printed money with DVFC. and the game is right up there 10 years ago. And you have so many other examples that were as big as that or on a similar scale in terms of, for example, sales, like Tekken 7, right? Many of the Mortal Kombat titles. Street Fighter 6 right now is going on that direction. Like, I think it has almost 7 million copies sold already. It is one of the most successful modern games when it comes to the fighting game genre. And like, you can argue that Street Fighter 6 is the most popular Street Fighter game since Street Fighter 2 in the 90s. Like, that's how big a Street Fighter is at the moment, okay? So like, you don't need to go too crazy to just take away the argument that fighting games are niche by definition. Like, there is more to the discussion than just accepting or saying that automatically all fighting games are gonna be small. Now, obviously, there is the discussion of the actual viewership more than the popularity of the games. Like, what are the raw numbers generally that fighting games can pull on YouTube, on Twitch, and they are going to be smaller than something like Minecraft, right, or like Roblox, or League of Legends. Like, naturally, that's nothing new. That's not like a new shiny truth with the comment that Ludwig made. We all know that. And if you're making content for fighting games and you're trying to kind of like pursue it for money, and it's not really something that you enjoy or a passion that you have, you should really just make another YouTube channel. Like, if you really want to earn money with YouTube, just choose another niche, like choose even another type of video game, or just do videos on other topics, because there are other opportunities in the platform to make and earn money if that's something that you want to do, which is completely fine, by the way, if you want to kind of like, you know, get a job through social media or YouTube. But don't do it with fighting games if you don't like them or you're not passionate about them, because it will be harder to be big or to grow on the platform. Now, it is not impossible though. There's multiple people that have grown over time into a relatively big size channel when it comes to, you know, just them making fighting game content. Even I can think of somebody like Doya, for example, that was such a big YouTuber in the Dragon Ball FighterZ era, and nowadays he just makes videos about almost anything that he wants to, just makes it entertaining, fun, which is what he's good at, and he's there rocking it, right? He's still going and diversified into other things, but he can still make a video about Street Fighter, about Dragon Ball FighterZ, and get, you know, 100, 200k views, which is pretty good if you ask me. And he has some of the biggest, you know, fighting game videos ever on the platform with the stuff that he did with some of his friends or like people that make Dragon Ball content. So it is not impossible to be big and grow based on fighting games, but you gotta make good content, you know? You gotta find what makes you unique. Are you entertaining? Are you, for example, also useful? Or do you help people to learn how to play fighting games? What exactly are you doing that makes you valuable on the space so that people will want to watch you, especially people that not actually play the games, okay? I think that that's one of the biggest barriers when it comes to making content about fighting games, that you really need to be creative if you want to grow a lot into how you can convince people to watch your videos that are not even playing the games in the first place, to try and put them into them, you know? And again, just to repeat it because it's so important, I do feel like that's the biggest challenge. How do you convince somebody that doesn't even play fighting games to watch a video about a fighting game in the first place? Maybe you have a very compelling story about a game that is super interesting. Maybe you're just incredibly entertaining and fun, right? Maybe you actually help people to get into fighting games with guides or some sort of big video that actually, you know, push people into trying the genre out, or things like that. I, for example, I consider myself like a small or medium-sized content creator, and I have a video that has almost, or I think over 100k views, which is how to get good at any fighting game, right? Which is a video that I did a while ago, trying to share things that have kind of like make me improve over the years in different fighting games and how you can use it across the board in different titles. And it doesn't mean that it's a perfect video. It doesn't mean that it's, you know, kind of like the Bible of how to get good at fighting games, but I guess that I said something useful or something that resonated with people. So the video got relatively big for somebody like me that has not even 8k subscribers yet, right? So there is something that you gotta find that is gonna make you unique and is gonna push people that maybe don't even play fighting games in the first place to watch your content. And it's always going to be the biggest barrier because it is so hard to push people to watch something that they don't play in the first place, especially when it is so kind of like, you know, technical and can be overwhelming like fighting games. Now, of course, you don't need to always make a video that is going to appeal to people that don't even play fighting games in the first place. That argument, I make it, you know, around the concept of how to maximize viewership, how to maybe grow on like YouTube or Twitch, and it is something that I'm still working on, but I find really valuable or super cool the idea that maybe you as a content creator, right, as somebody that is on YouTube or whatever platform, can actually push people to try a fighting game for the first time, because I genuinely feel like fighting games are some of the coolest video games out there. They're incredible, and also like I feel like everybody can play a fighting game and have fun. You don't need to be good, you don't need to be, you know, super crazy on the game and crack. You just need to have fun and enjoy yourself. And I feel like everybody is just one game away of being a fighting game fan. You just need to find the fighting game that you are passionate about, that has the characters that make you crazy, you know, visual design that you like, the mechanics that you like, the content that you enjoy, and you're gonna become a fan of fighting games. I truly think that everybody is one step away of that, at least people that like video games, right? And you as a content creator maybe can actually help the genre, or like try to make it grow even more, thanks to putting up a good video on YouTube or something like that. So there is viewership out there. There is an audience that is big. You know, there's millions of people that you can actually push to watch a video about fighting games. But how exactly are you going to achieve that? Okay, it's not as easy as just putting up a ranked gameplay session online. That is not going to work. There is need, you know, for effort, for good and cool ideas, and thinking outside the box. What can you do that is unique, that gives people value, either entertainment, you know, utility when it comes to education or like learning and more. So the viewership is there. I don't think that it is as simple as saying there are no viewers, the games are niche, you know, fighting games are small, you're never gonna grow, and the games are always gonna stay small. I think that all of those kind of like, you know, phrases are actually a lie. There is much more detail, nuance about what you can do to have viewership, and also for fighting games to be big, popular, and they are already. There's already so many big fighting games and so many titles in the fighting game genre that have been iconic and really big on scale. So I really don't like, you know, to just kind of like lowball fighting games as a genre of video games, because they have so much to give. They can be really big, and also there can be big content creators that do content around fighting games. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like give my perspective on this as a smaller creator that has been a huge fan of fighting games my entire life. And I'm not making this video because I think or feel like I have all the answers and I'm like the guru of how to make fighting games big on YouTube or as video games. Like, that is not the case at all. I just wanted to make this video because I think that I have maybe an interesting input on the topic to make it a bit more flexible, because I just feel like it is so rigid and unfair to call fighting games niche by definition 24/7, or say that fighting games are always unpopular and that they don't have viewership. I think that there is a lot of nuance into that, like I've tried, you know, to show in this video on the best way possible. And I do feel like if you want to grow on YouTube making fighting game content, you can. There is going to be a lot of challenges. There is going to be, you know, times in which it's going to be really hard, like anything else in life that requires effort, to be completely honest. And if you want to make, you know, YouTube content about fighting games because you want to earn money and you're not passionate about fighting games and you actually don't like them a lot, then just don't do it, man. Put your effort in something else. There's other contexts in which it can be easier and also more lucrative to make content or whatever social media engagement that you want to do. But if you're passionate about fighting games, it's something that you love, and you feel like making content for them would maybe make you more happy or add value to your life as an individual, then I encourage you to do so. Pursue it, because I truly think there is a giant audience out there for you if you actually put the time, the effort, and respect into it, and essentially try to learn over time about it, okay? That doesn't mean that BlazBlue or Melty Blood are gonna have 200,000 concurrent players on Steam tomorrow, but maybe you can make a video about BlazBlue that gets 500,000 views or whatever, and over 80% of the people that watched that didn't know much about the series, and from that pool of people, 1,000 bought the game, and you just made your favorite franchise or fighting game ever bigger, okay? I really think that it is possible, and it can be something that is actually, you know, very, very rewarding for you as a person if you actually like it and want to pursue it. I just wanted to talk about this. It is a very different video from what I tend to do, but I just find it fascinating, like really, really interesting as a person and what I like to do, because it is a topic that connects with all my interests, I guess. So yeah, see you.